something good is happening here in Malawi. The perennially impoverished African nation may be showing the rest of Africa and the world how poor countries can feed themselves.
I can say that the process of the president is very, very good.
Joshua Mawal is a subsistence farmer here. Because of a new government program, he's now not only growing enough for his own family, but he actually has a surplus that he's able to sell.
After harvesting, I'm keeping that of maize. So after that, I'm planting another maize.
So 2 harvests?
2 harvests.
Okay.
I've got also another garden, and that one is special for rice. As of now, I've already harvested 9 bags of them.
So you're working all year round?
Yeah, I'm working round and again.
Which, of course, is exactly the way he wants it. Providing for himself and his family, rather than relying on food donated from overseas. Whether by the loose change in our pockets or major government aid, each year Americans give hundreds of millions of dollars to help feed the hungry in other parts of the world. A seemingly never-ending exercise. But the leader of this tiny country is trying to say never again to famine.
We are going by the old adage that you give a person fish and he'll be hungry again tomorrow. But you teach a person how to fish, he will never be hungry again.
Malawian President Binguwa Mutharika is aiming to end starvation here by defying the West, and in doing so, changing how dependent nations handle food security. At first glance, it's hard to find Malawi on a map. Many Americans only know it as the place where Madonna adopted her son. But celebrity visits notwithstanding, President Mutharika's plan to combat famine is garnering a very different kind of attention. You could say his solution is full of fertilizer. Joshua is one of the farmers receiving a government voucher for fertilizer and seed. Over the past 3 seasons, the current administration has enacted a controversial subsidy program, which has pulled the country out of immediate danger of starvation. This is all your
field.
Your land?
Your land, yeah.
Yeah. And you received vouchers, coupons from the government?
Yeah.
Joshua and other farmers I talked to here say the subsidies have changed everything. Joshua's neighbor, Umkumputira, also grows maize.
We can see the difference between now and the past. Since we started receiving the inputs, we are much better off. The program is a very good one, and we don't go hungry anymore.
Frank Winafumbo is the Deputy Minister of Agriculture and Food Security.
This is a group in our society which earn less than $1 a day. And it's a clear given logic to say if you were to produce enough maize or crops, you have to use fertilizers. And most of our people in the rural areas are unable to afford the price of fertilizers. This is why there was a need. Indeed, if we believed in participatory democracy, that we could not afford 80% of our population marginalized. This is why the president made a very strong decision that it is high time we subsidize these people so that they could afford this very expensive commodity, but yet very, very necessary commodity.
Very necessary because just the year before, in 2005, Malawi went through a severe food crisis, producing one of its lowest maize harvests on record, and saw 38% of the population in need of food aid.
Past 20 years or so, Malawi has always had food shortages. We had famines. We had severe cases of malnutrition. As soon as I took office, I decided that Malawians must be able to feed themselves. We decided also that Malawi should be turned into a hunger-free nation.
Can it be this easy? Governments giving fertilizer and seed to farmers may seem like an obvious fix, but it is exactly what Western economists tell African countries not to do. Why? 2 reasons: philosophy and money. Kevin Sullivan represents the United States Embassy in Malawi and acknowledges some Western resistance.
You hear a lot about donor opposition to this program, and I suspect that that probably comes from some general suspicions that economists, including those in global donor organizations, whether the World Bank or elsewhere, about how hard it is to really administer subsidies and how they can sometimes miss the mark.
As a general philosophy.
As a general philosophy.
Another and possibly larger reason for that opposition is an overriding belief in free trade. Most Western economists believe that the way for poor nations to develop is through a market-based system, and subsidies distort the free market. That's a hard pill to swallow for some leaders whose populations are facing immediate threats of starvation. Poor countries like Malawi depend on Western governments and organizations like the World Bank for millions of dollars to support their national budget. These donors have the ultimate say in where that money goes and how it's used. So if the rich countries don't like a particular program, often they'll simply refuse to fund it. That leads to some tough decisions for dependent leaders.
Is there an exit strategy for the subsidies the Americans have been giving? They've been giving America for decades. The European Union, under the Common Agricultural Policy, do they have an exit strategy? They still give subsidies to their farmers, even though many of them can afford to buy fertilizer and even tractors and still survive. So why should someone ask me to have an exit strategy for my subsidy program?
Farm subsidies rarely go to poor people. The average farmer makes twice what the average American earns. Yet Nebraska politicians want more.
We need to get farmers a better safety net here.
If you're a politician from Nebraska and you want to get elected, Republican or Democrat, the way to do that is to say, I support farm subsidies.
Yes, that's a very important thing to our farmer is subsidies.
They would lose dramatic population if the subsidies weren't there at all.
But despite the billions spent on subsidies, farm towns are smaller than ever. In Mike Korth's town, store after store is boarded up.
It's pretty sad. The school at one time had just short of 1,000 kids in it, and now we don't have 300.
It hasn't kept these small towns alive.
Well, I think it has. I'm from a small town of 72 people. I am, and I'm going to tell you, farm subsidies have helped that town.
After this interview, we researched his town. It was twice as big during the Depression. Population has dropped steadily ever since.
But this isn't working.
Well, I think it is, actually.
More. You guys are on welfare. It's not working.
Actually, I disagree with that because I think it is working.
Actually, a government study found that the more farm aid a county got, the more likely it was to lose population. Why would that be? Because subsidies make it harder for smaller farmers to compete. Economist Walter Williams.
The farm subsidies go to very, very wealthy farmers, not the ma and pa farm. It's these huge agribusinesses that get the big subsidies.
Farmers like Maurice Wilder. He's been America's single biggest recipient of farm subsidies. He wouldn't let us take a picture of his jet, but here he is at one of his many homes. Wilder's estimated to be worth $500 million. But he still gets your help making ends meet.
Where is the limit where you say, you know what, you're big enough now, you can put your pants on by yourself?
How do rich farmers legally get subsidies? The Farm Bill does say no payments to farmers who make more than $1.25 million a year.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you, any one of them guys, they've got accountants that can hide that income.
When you have a farm bill this size, this stretches almost 2 football fields. There are loopholes in here somewhere for a wealthy farmer to crawl through.
I don't blame anybody from taking it when it's there and available.
You're getting a handout.
Well, they're getting, you know, in a sense it is a handout.
This is not a handout, take it and if you lose it, fine, walk away. Not at all.
It's not?
No, it's not.
Why isn't that a handout?
I don't term it a handout, I term it an investment.
But that's your money he's investing. And why? We don't need farm subsidies to have an ample food supply. I bet you didn't know that the growers of most crops don't get subsidies. Growers of apples, bananas, broccoli, cabbage, cantaloupe, carrots, cauliflower, grapes, lemons, limes, lettuce, and dozens of other crops get no subsidies. There's no cabbage crisis or pineapple panic. And yet, because big crops get subsidies like rice and corn, food costs more.
I'm not used to paying these prices.
Another reason prices are high is that farmers get paid for not farming.
You get a government payment on it, about $26,000.
More than $20,000 a year for not farming his land. Real estate agents even use farm payments to sell homes to non-farmers. Agents didn't want to say that on television, so our producer posed as a home buyer and brought along a video camera.
Do you have to farm it? Do you have to farm it to receive it? No. It's like a little bonus that you don't really have to do anything to get.
All these homes get government payments, though nothing's farmed here. The owner of this home collected $7,000.
Well, it's like offered to us.
She isn't exactly sure why.
I think it's a weird setup, but there's a lot of weird setups.
This is just a crazy system. It's left over from the 1930s, left over from the Depression, and it's a great example of how nothing is as permanent as a temporary government program.